Wafube, peace and blessings. This is Misael Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, coming at you once again with another episode of Raw Talk. And today we're going to get back into the Moorish dimension. This will be an excellent show as a lot of history will be revealed, and hopefully it'll clarify a lot of things for everybody upon their Moorish path and just history in general. That's just really good to know. So I want you to sit back and relax and really have a good time. I want to begin by sharing with you how this video got started. A couple of weeks back, someone inboxed me a video wherein in the video we saw a Muslim brother from the East, and he was talking about American history, where we know there's some notations during the colonial era of certain areas being inhabited by the quote unquote Portuguese and Turkish people throughout the eastern seaboard of the 13 colonies at that time. And I guess the brother sent me, the video, to show, hey, the Moors were here and things of that nature. And a lot of times when people hear about Turkish and Portuguese people, this is what comes up, and advantagely, rightly so. But in some regards, some of those people possibly may have been of the African diaspora and maybe not. Here's why. Recently, I had to make some changes on the Wikipedia page that of Noble Drew Ali. And I'm gonna explain why I had to make a couple of adjustments, because it was very vital and I didn't want to offend, some people with, misinformation and use of slur terms that were on the page. But before we even go into that section, I want to ask the viewer if they are aware of a history of people who were sent to America as slaves before Africans. And they endured 400 years of slavery, and they also lost massive numbers of people in the Holocaust. So they suffered relentlessly throughout the history of the Americas, and also suffered a second brutal tragedy of the Holocaust. And actually, these people are noted as, the oppression that they receive is actually considered equal or even surpassing that of Moorish peoples in America, who are commonly known as African Americans. Their trials and tribulations actually exceed that paradigm. Okay. And so I want you to think about the identification of these people. And I'm going to try to go into the Wikipedia page of Noble Drew Ali. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you the adjustment that I made and how it affects Moorish history and the overview of the Moorish American today. Let me go into sharing my screen. Hopefully I get this right. I tried to do it before and it kept coming out. I don't know why this keeps coming out like this. Okay, so let me stop the share. And okay, so now that kind of fixed. We had some technical issues. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to look at Noble Drew Ali's Wikipedia page. Okay, there we go. Finally. All right, we got that into place. And most of everyone watching this video is here. This is the one change I did make. When it deals with the origin of his history, I want to definitely make some adjustments there, because it may not even read right, but I want to make that quick correction. When it's talking about his history, it says one version of his life common among the members of the Moorish Science Temple holds that Drew was raised by an abusive aunt who once threw him into a furnace. This version holds that he left home at 16 and joined a band of Romani people who took him overseas to Egypt and the Middle East. Okay, so what originally in this section it was a band of gypsies. But gypsies is like using the N word. So, you know, for a lot of people may not be aware of that. I'm aware of that because my grandfather was, and my grandfather was a Roma person, a Romani person. You know, so you know, I know a lot about the history. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen a little bit. And for those who was wondering what the question was, the quote unquote, I'm gonna say the slur term once in this video, but no, it's a slur term. The G word, the gypsies, those are the people who were sent to America as slaves before Africans, endured 400 years of slavery, and also suffered the Holocaust. Today, throughout Europe, they're identified as Black. Okay, they, you know, the same things are said that you know you see someone who's of Roma descent, as it's properly called, they're accused of being criminals or you know feasting off the government as welfare recipients, you know, different things of that nature. And a lot of times they would secure and hide their ID. Let me, as I'm talking, do a share screen on the Roma appearance. So that's clear. Let me stop the share because I don't know this computer why I'm getting these bugs in it. Hold on. Okay, so we're back again. I'm gonna try to screen share, get these bugs out the way. And okay, so you can see here in the screen, this is a picture of Romani people, people of Roma descent, or commonly known under the G word. And people have to remember that after in Europe, when the Moors were getting kicked out of Spain, there were several problems. There was a Jewish problem, there was a Gypsy problem, and then eventually, about a century later, a little while later, there was a Negro problem. Okay, so in order to, you know, get through this Gypsy problem, Europe decided, hey, let's send these people over as slaves to um, to the Americas and that sort of thing. And so a lot of times when you really think about what happened, well, let's really read about what happened. Let me go into a scholarly resource that discusses the dexterity of, you know, Romani people being enslaved in the United States. But as you can see, these were also people of color as well. Let me go into this. Let me see, let me pull this up. Let me do my share screen again. Hopefully it's working this time because you know what? I'm just gonna do it from this perspective right here. There we go. So we're in the house. And this is from the Handbook of Texas, the Texas State Historical uh, Association. And actually, this was written by a Romani scholar, Ian F. Hancock. And in the beginning, it says there are about 20,000 Romani Americans in Texas out of the national population of about 1 million. Romani people, commonly known, let me just increase, hold on a second. Let me see if I can increase the size of it. I don't think I can do this right now. Hold on a second. Let me just stop this. Wait a minute. Hold on a minute. I don't know why it's reacting like this. 1 second. Let me just stop my screen share. Okay, so we're back. Sorry about that. We're just having technical difficulties there. I kind of understand why, but I'll talk about that in another video. Let me share my screen again. We're gonna go through this and get this correct. Here we go. We're right on point this time. And let me pick up from the second line, but you can see is I'm going to have this link in the description. It says Romani people, commonly known as gypsies, have been in America since 1498 when Columbus brought some on his third voyage to the West Indies. Their subsequent forced transportation brought most gypsies across the Atlantic. To understand why gypsies were shipped to the Americas, American colonies, it is necessary, first of all, to examine the circumstances of their presence in Europe, which I'm going to skip through for a second, but you can read it on your own as I'm going to have this in there, and we could see the extent of their slavery in the Americas. It says, during the colonial period, beginning in the second paragraph, Western Europe nations dealt with their quote unquote gypsy problem by transporting them in large number overseas. The Spanish shipped gypsies to their American colonies, including Spanish Louisiana, as part of their Solution Americana. The French sent numbers to the Antilles, and the Scots, English, and Dutch to North America. So we have 6 nations that were exporting the quote unquote gypsy, the Romani people property to cure this gypsy problem. And these were the same nations that would later enslave and send Africans overseas. Okay. And of course, Africans were here as well. But I'm going to get into this a little bit further as we continue. But I want to get into the meat of this, where it says sent numbers to the Antilles and the Scots, English, and Dutch to North America and the Caribbean. Cromwell shipped Romani child gypsies from Britain as slaves to southern plantations. There is documentation of gypsies being owned by free Black slaves in Jamaica. And in both Cuba and Louisiana, today there are Afro-Romani populations resulting from intermarriages between freed Africans and gypsy slaves. Other well-represented Romani populations in America include the Bashalt, or musician gypsies who migrated after the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And it goes further. Okay, so if someone ever asked you that question, who were the first slaves sent to America and who endured 400 years of slavery, it would have to be the Romani people, who were misnomered and often known by the slur term gypsies. I have that heritage in my blood too, so I take a special interest in it. But I wanted to kind of discuss, like, sometimes when you're watching ancestral shows, I used to have it out for Henry Louis Gates when he used to have these ancestral shows, and someone says, "Hey, man, my great grandmother, she was a Native American," and then someone takes a test and doesn't show up. A lot of times, that person could have been a Romani person, and they had to pose as a Native American person. You know what I'm saying? If I share my screen again, you can see how the population of the quote unquote Roma people look and how they could easily pass. Let me just do this a different way. For someone of Native American or Mexican descent, this is a picture of Romani people. They originally come out of Northwest India. And, they have stories of migration, but through that time, they amalgamated with a lot of people. And actually, they were also described, before being exported into the Americas, they also dwelt in North Africa. They were also called Moors. So I find it very ironic that Noble Drew Ali, that's something that should be looked upon, that this guy, he spent time with the Romani community, and they were very, oppressed. If someone found out, their heritage, they could be killed. You know what I'm saying? So they had to really move with secrecy and still move in secrecy today. You know what I'm saying? In a lot of different ways. Like, a lot of people are kind of more, they may come out and say, now, but, up until like the late 90s, they would just pass as something else because they didn't want to deal with the persecution, you know what I'm saying, that came with their identification, and they have no homeland. They have no homeland. So they're just like, where you get the words traveling man and Freemasonry, that comes from the Roma. the quote unquote misnomer gypsies, that's where you get the word traveling man. Their identification sometimes is almost simultaneous with traveler. And because they were deep into fortune telling and the spiritual arts, they contributed a lot to Freemasonry as well. And of course, it's blanketed out of history because of the prejudice that stands against them. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times, like when you hear about, somebody calling someone in North Carolina Turkish or something, at this point, we don't really know what that could mean. You know what I'm saying? Unless we have some other evidence surrounding the case. And that's why I kind of made this video, because a lot of people are unaware of that history. A lot of people are unaware of Creole culture even. But when it comes to certain terms like Melungeon, people can, assimilate those things with Moorish under the principles and definitions that we have of it. But there's a lot of history, bro, that is not known. And you don't want to be the quote unquote asshole saying everything is you, like you some cartoon character, and not really know what you're talking about. You see what I'm saying? I didn't take the brother's video offensively because he doesn't know any better. However, I know the history, you know what I'm saying, and in that regard, and so should a lot of Moorish Americans, because even in the extent of Noble Drew Ali's ancestry, it is highly probable that he also was of Romani descent, along with West African descent. A lot of people who were Romani passed as Native Americans and other Mexicans as other people because they just didn't want to get persecuted. I kind of suspect more so that he was of Romani descent than being the grandson of a Cherokee woman. I completely I throw that out the window. And the reason why is that Romani society are very closed society. So he couldn't just be on the bandwagon and join a circus and say, hey, I'm traveling with gypsies. That was just a no-no in that day. Those people could have been killed. So why they trusted him, a lot of people in the colonial era, of course, because they were slaves also, there was a certain form of relationship. However, there was, it was still a lot of secrecy because if their ID was known, that was it. They were getting beheaded. You know what I'm saying? And you could read all about their persecution. I write about it. I'm affiliated with a couple of different societies. So I know deep that history. If someone wants to ask me some questions on that before they go around running their mouth and shooting the video out, then you could just shoot me an email. Even certain, certain surnames like Oxendine, like I think this was a discussion in whose book was that? That was a discussion in Jose Pineda Bay's book. You know what I'm saying? Othello's Children. He brings up that surname, which is the surname of my like sixth great grandfather. I know exactly where that surname comes from. You know what I'm saying? It's a surname of travelers, which are known as Romani people. So, research it because a lot of these people could also be in your bloodline. You see what I'm saying? In Europe, they, it's really an interesting history. In some ways, it's depressing because the amount of persecution that they receive. Even recently, I saw something on Fox News where they were talking about uh, a group of Romani people moved someplace in Texas, and people were complaining that they were pissing in the street and stealing chickens. Like it was just some stupid stuff. But this is what goes on. They deal with police brutality. Getting killed, all this crazy stuff that's going on. However, what I do respect about the culture is that um, they're not really so much about killing each other. You know what I'm saying? However, if you really look into that thing, I'm pretty sure that you'll find out some amazing information. I'm gonna leave some links in the description, and I just want to drop this video right quick because it's been nerving me, and I just didn't really have time to get together a whole fiasco presentation and stuff. The other side of it is that when you look into Moorish Spain, um, it consisted heavily as far as the indigenous population of people doing progressive things, of Moorish Jews, Romani people, who are popularly known in the misnomer gypsies, and Moors. And a lot of times, the Romani people was interchangeably recognized with the Moors. You see what I'm saying? So, you may want to do a little bit of research in that and about the American diaspora. I'm probably going to deal with a book with that because there's not too much on it. There's the article on the Texas Historian page, and there's a couple of websites, and a lot of people who identify, quote unquote, as Afro-Romani. We don't really come out the box like that. A lot of people, a lot of people who are Moorish Americans may know their Romani ancestry. You see what I'm saying? It would be interesting if the quote unquote African Americans knew the same, because that would answer a lot of their questions. There was one brother who had took a DNA test or whatever, and he was like, man, why am I, 20, 50% Hungarian? And that's a Romani ancestor. I know that because I know the history. I know where the populations come from, where they moved to, migrated, and stuff like that. They were known as travelers, and they contributed a great deal to Freemasonry. And you can find this in older books. So instead of just assuming something because it has an Islamic flair to it, like Turkish or Portuguese, and these people describe down south, so automatically I'm gonna think that's me. Give it some weight. See what are other surrounding circumstances around it, because you don't really know who you're talking to. You know what I'm saying? This brother sending me this as if I'm silly and don't even know this history. You know what I'm saying? So this is me, Sal Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, and I just want to say peace and blessings to everyone. Have a good night.